Welcome, Pierre Schelken. When it comes to the energy transition, what are the challenges and opportunities you see?
If you see what's going well, you see in particular the electricity sector decarbonizing quickly, sometimes even quicker than we thought. Last year we were already very close to 50% renewable electricity. You add to that 20-25% nuclear, and you have fossil fuels basically at 25%, down at 25% in the production of electricity. And this share of renewables is going to increase as the years go by. You see a lot of progress being done in the debate on grids and the debate on investments. All of these issues are issues that are really moving, and you have indeed challenges. There still is an investment gap compared to where we need to be. So in the period running up to 2030, the investment needs are somewhere around 650 billion euros, and we are far below that. We are far below it in some sectors. There is actually some sectors where we are at the right level, or even above. For instance, in solar PV, there is no real investment gap. But in other sectors, most sectors, there is a real investment gap. That's certainly one thing, which means that our projections are rather positive, but that they will, of course, depend on investment stepping up in the energy transition. You still have a couple of bottlenecks, if you want. Obviously, the grids as they are today, European grids are generally, compared to the rest of the world, are very good quality. They are absolutely nowhere near where they need to be by 2030, and even less so by 2040 and 2050 in their capacity to deal with a decarbonized and a very flexible energy system. You have the issue of storage still, the issue of batteries and so forth. So there are still a couple of these bottlenecks that we need to address for the transition really to become reality. We're on the way. That is why we are coming in November with our investment strategy. You can also see that in the Commission proposal for the next long-term budget, there is a very strong increase of energy spending, and all of that because, of course, we want to contribute to closing the investment gap.
When I then look at the individual member states, how is the 10 years planning related to what you're saying now?
So they have now, nearly all of them, presented a national plan, not all, where we have 25 of these national plans. We've assessed them. And what you see is that in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, we are pretty much on track. In terms of renewables, we are very close to be on track. Not quite, but there's a small gap. And in terms of energy efficiency, we are far behind. We are not far behind, we are further behind. So that's an area where if there is a real, if you want, concern in terms of reaching the 2030.
How is it with this 10 years plan related to the Paris Agreement and the NDCs?
Well, you should see the 10 years plans as a way of implementation. So you have the EU in the Paris Agreement context, you have the agreement, you have the climate law, the EU climate law, and then of course the plans are how do member states contribute to meeting these EU objectives, and that's what we try then to assess. We monitor and assess, and the conclusions of the plans that we now have for 2030 is this. But we are looking to change this approach. So we will be revising the legislation related to the plans, the governance regulation. We'll be revising it probably next year, or maybe the year after, but soon. And the idea is to use these plans much more, not so much as a compliance tool, but much more as an investment strategy. So the idea would be for the member states then to determine what are the investments they need to do, how to find the financing. If you simply add the 25 plans, you will not necessarily get the same result as if you also do a somewhat top-down exercise on the European needs. There needs to be both. There needs to be bottom-up, but there also needs there needs to be a bit of top-down. I think we can say member states are taking this policy and the objectives seriously. And then it's quite interesting when you assess these plans, because you will see good examples in one plan on one specific issue. I'll give you the examples of the Lithuanian plan that is very clear on the investment side. And then you see good examples on other aspects like public consultation in other plans. So there is no perfect plan, and that is not surprising.
But you don't have any best in class if you look at your member
That's
state?
not the point. That's not the point of this exercise. The point of the exercise is to make sure that we put more wind in the sails of the transition.
Mm. Well, is it any message in front of Belém, the COP meeting in November?
Well, it is. It certainly underpins the EU's credibility. We have not only established targets, we have not only made these targets legally binding, but we also have policies in place to actually meet these targets. And that is more that can be said for all parts of the world.
Mm. But let's go into one of the tricky issues in energy transition, and we talk about the greenhouse gas methane.
Yeah.
EU has an ambition target and a framework on policy, but it's still a lot of things to do when we talk about oil and gas and also the coal mines.
Yeah.
What is your view of the implementation of the methane strategy?
No, I think we are very committed to the implementation of the strategy. I think the policy is rather now well in place. The tools, the legal instruments are there. They've been negotiated with all parties in Parliament and Council. They are now there. And now we turn, of course, to implementation, knowing fully well, of course, that we need to make sure that while the focus is on renewables combined in some member states with nuclear, that of course there is still a usage of fossil fuels, and that the carbon footprint of these fossil fuels needs to be as limited as possible.
Mm. But it seems to be both a technical solution in place and business models through the EU ETS system. Mm-hmm. Will that be in use for the time to come, where the implementation is in place?
I think we are very much looking into what technical solutions there are out there, and we see that there is a part of industry that is really able to deliver on possible solutions, and that of course we want to encourage with the means that we have.
Mm. Well, today it's a political hot discussion around the US deal on how much of purchase of energy solution from the US.
Yeah.
$750 billion. Mm-hmm. How will that reflect on your Green Deal targets and also the methane strategy?
Well, the first thing to say is that the US has, through the energy crisis, been a trusted partner. We have diversified away from Russian fossil fuels at a very high speed, and at a speed that most people, I think, would not have considered possible. But we managed to do that. And that has been partly because we have speeded up the transition. It's partly because we have been more sober in the way we use energy, and in particular gas, within the EU. And it is partly because we've had the possibility to work with countries such as Norway and the US, of course. Then in terms of, in the case of US, of course, LNG, in still meeting the demand. We have a policy in place, and of course, as Commissioner has been clear, we continue working on the implementation of that policy.
Mm. It seems US, with all their wealth and all the export of LNG, they have a big problem with the methane. But when you look at policy in place, the European Union and Canada and Norway are front runners. But how to deal with the US when they now also take away the regulation around the greenhouse gas protocol?
This is something that belongs to belongs to bilateral dialogue between us and the US. What I certainly can see is that we have a common aim across the Atlantic of reducing any form of Russian exports of fossil fuels, because it finances their war chest, and that I think is a very common target on both sides of the Atlantic.
Thank you very much, Pierre.
Thanks very much.